The 189th edition of the Roy's Boys podcast starts right now.
Carolina basketball family is the strongest there's ever been, there ever will be.
Nate Humphrey hands King Rice the ball. Pushes into Hubert Davis. 8 seconds. Davis trying to get free. Over to Fox. Fox, baseline. Up for the shot. Down off the glass. Oklahoma calls timeout. But the game is over. The game is over. Carolina has upset number 1 Oklahoma. Been ready on his second attempt. That one is no good. They battle for it. Loose ball. Recovered by Vinny.
With 20 seconds left to play. Goes back to Michael Jordan. Jumper from out on the left. Good! 63, 62, 13, 12, 11. Georgetown with one timeout. Brent Brown looking. Throw away to Worthy. 35. The Tar Heels are going to win the national championship. Carolina with foul. He takes the timeout. Technical foul. Technical foul.
Brown gets it into Williams. Here comes Williams front court. Williams on the drive. Gets it back out the head. Long outside shot. Short rebound. It's over. Carolina has won the national championship. And how about the Tar Heels? They are the national champions.
The Tar Heels are the national dadgum champions.
And that's what it takes when you big time games. You've got to compete. You do it with your brain, and you got to do it with your heart too. And that's pretty doggone good.
From QCBroadcasting.com, this is the Roy's Boys podcast with your host, Josh Marlowe. Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of the Roy's Boys podcast. We are powered by Carolina Electrical Services. It is officially Duke week, which means we turn to Brendan Marks from The Athletic to break down the upcoming matchup with the Blue Devils. Brendan, first off, how's it going today, man?
Doing all right. I'm trying to enjoy this sun. Hope you guys are doing all right as well.
Yeah, it is a beautiful day down here in Charlotte. So, look, a lot has happened since the last time I talked to you, including a win at Duke, 3 ACC home games canceled due to COVID issues for Carolina, and some really big wins followed by some really disappointing losses. What word or phrase best describes Carolina this season?
I'm actually going to steal something from one of my other colleagues who covers the Tar Heels. I'm going to go with inconsistently consistent.
Mm-hmm.
And it works both ways. I mean, I think, that has sort of been the story of the season for UNC. I think you can go back and look since that Duke game. The record is basically win-loss, win-loss, win-loss. And that's sort of what you can expect from a young team. And I think the thing that's shocking is that is still the case now after – 80 practices, 24, 25 games. The inconsistencies is still just so shocking to me. And I think, really, if UNC, whether they end up getting into the tournament or they end up not getting in, that inconsistencies is the thing that I'm always going to remember about this season, and it's really sort of dictated where the Tar Heels have gone.
One of those games, Brendan, nice to talk to you, Anthony. Dan, I got to commend you, first of all, for how many radio shows you have been on, man. You are a trooper, brother. So, but you look back at that Miami game that was supposed to take place and was canceled after, of course, the video of the party that took place after the Duke game. When you look at that incident, it may not have completely derailed the season, but what do you think, when it comes to that situation, how much did that sort of derail the season with the fact that maybe there was some trust lost in the locker room or whatnot?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing about that whole incident to me, it's sort of twofold. One, I think, and as the player's statement and Coach Williams' statement in the aftermath made clear, we saw two dudes on video, but they were not the only two dudes there. I think we can feel pretty confident in saying that those guys just happened to be the ones who got caught on video. And that leads me to my second point, which is, it's sort of hard to believe that is the only time that's happened. Again, I think this is a situation where you're talking about these guys are just getting caught for the first time. So in terms of what it does to this team, in terms of what it does momentum-wise, it just really reveals a lack of leadership, I think, because especially one of the guys in that video is on the NCAA Leadership Council. He's supposed to be a captain. I think Roy Williams has looked at Armando Bacot all season long as a guy that he would want to go to and he could broach issues with the team with and that sort of thing, especially knowing that Garrison Brooks Sr. won't be around forever. And that clearly hasn't come to fruition in full. So I think, from a trust perspective, certainly it had a negative impact on the team. And more importantly, they lose a winnable Miami game. It leads to some changes in scheduling. And certainly it is not something that has helped the Tar Heels in any way. Let me say that.
I mentioned Carolina's had some really big wins since I last spoke to you, including a 45-point thrashing of Louisville, and then an upset win over Florida State to give Roy Williams his 900th career win. Let's focus on the achievement for Roy, who in the last 2 seasons has passed his mentor Dean Smith in wins and is on the verge of passing Bob Knights on the all-time wins list. Is there any way possible that Williams is underrated both nationally and by us Tar Heel fans?
It's not only possible, it is. It's true. That's the reality of the situation. I mean, the Fire Roy crowd was especially loud last season, but, after every bad loss, they come rearing their heads back. And, I think on a more national perspective, Roy Williams has never really been included in some of those larger conversations. You talk about the greats of the sport, and you're going to get the same Mount Rushmore from everyone. It's going to be Dean Smith, it's Mike Krzyzewski, it's John Wooden, it's Bob Knight. And you look at what he's able to do and what he has done, this is a guy who very well may end up with, the second most wins of all time. I don't think I'm going out on a limb and saying that's all that crazy, especially given the pace that his UNC teams have been at. So, for whatever reason, whether it's his style, whether it is the fact that he's been at 2 places, I think that's contributed. I think him leaving Kansas and coming to North Carolina midway through his career has, for whatever reason, sort of diminished some of those previous accomplishments. But the dude has had 2 separate Hall of Fame careers. And when all is said and done, he's going to get his due. But no, certainly right now, I don't think that Roy Williams is viewed publicly across the country in the same sort of light that he's probably deserving of.
Yeah, you mentioned, Brendan, about, the up and downs that the Tar Heels have been through here in recent weeks. So along with those big wins, you've had some tough losses to Marquette and Syracuse. Were those losses really more due to Carolina's inexperience, or was there something underlying that you saw from the team in those defeats?
I think obviously the inexperience is a factor. I think guys not understanding the gravity of these games, not understanding, the perilous position UNC is still in. This is by no means a team that is a lock for the NCAA tournament. You lose to Duke on Saturday and you lose early in the ACC tournament, and you're making things real hard for yourself. So I do think that's one factor. But in terms of strictly on court, it's turnovers. It's turnovers. Right. Turnovers. That is the thing that's killing this team. I think you can look at just about any offensive metric you want: shooting percentages, true shooting percentages, effective field goal percentage, 3-point. I mean, you can look at any of these, and you're going to come away with the same conclusion. That's that UNC is not a good shooting basketball team. This is not. And with a guy like Kerwin Walton, who's a sub-100 freshman, when he is your lone, consistent shooter, that means you're probably in pretty bad shape. And UNC is. And that's not changing at this point in the year. So to me, I say the turnovers are much more important because it doesn't matter as much that UNC is so bad shooting-wise when they're getting over 40% of their own misses. They get the offensive rebounds. They pound the glass, traditional Carolina style. That works. That is a system that leads to wins. Yep. The problem is when you have turnovers, those turnovers are costing you the initial shots. If those initial shots go in, great. Obviously, a 3-pointer is better than a putback too. But if you're not even getting the shots, then you don't have a chance to get the offensive rebounds. You don't have a chance to get those second chance points. You don't have a chance to get the other team in foul trouble. So to me, the turnovers more than anything else are sort of emblematic in those losses. And if UNC does end up having a quick end to its season here in the coming weeks, that, to me, is most likely going to be the reason why.
All right, Brendan, let's set the scene for Saturday's matchup with Duke by going back to the game earlier this year in Cameron where Caleb Love shined. What stood out to you the most about Caleb Love's play in that game?
That he played well for once.
Yikes.
I don't mean to be harsh on the kid. I know he's a good guy. I think everyone in the locker room really likes him, respects him. But at the same time, it's hard to look at that game and not wonder where that's been all year. I mean, the most points he scored, easily the most efficient performance he's had, the most aggressive he's been. in the 4 games after that Duke game, he had 20 combined points and was shooting like 7% from 3. I mean, I am by no means a stud athlete, but I think I could go out there and make 1 out of 35 attempts. So, I think the thing that really allowed him to thrive in that game, I think it was personal. Caleb Love grew up wanting to go to Duke. He grew up wanting that Duke offer. And, essentially, Jeremy Roach commits to Duke, and he ends up being Coach K's chosen point guard of the future. And Caleb Love knew that and wanted to go and improve a point. And I think he made that very clear. The question to me is just, why hasn't he been able to replicate that level of aggressiveness in any of the games beforehand or since? So certainly it hasn't been the season I think that Caleb Love would have hoped for, the season UNC fans would have hoped he would have had. But no, I'd be interested to see if he has that same level of aggressiveness and prove-itness, if you will, in the second matchup.
To play off of that just a little bit, Brendan, we've seen how important the point guard matchup has been in the last 3 games of this rivalry. Do you think that coming into this game, Carolina holds the advantage going in the battle of the point guards?
It's tough to say, right? Because obviously Caleb Love played incredibly the last time these two teams met. And I think, again, I go back to, I think the personal nature of that really contributed. But in terms of different guys giving him different looks, I think that Duke has some interesting options that can make his life difficult. I think Jordan Goldwater at Duke, he's one of the best defenders in the ACC on ball. And he is someone who, if Caleb Love tries to, get crazy with the dribbles and not pass the ball and he gets sticky in the offense, Jordan Goldwater is going to take his lunch money and embarrass him. And he's capable of doing that. I don't think that Jeremy Roach or even DJ Stewart, so to speak, those other guys at Duke, I don't know that they necessarily are all that much better than Caleb. I think that all 3, I would say, have had their ups and downs. But certainly, I think Caleb is capable of being the best point guard on the floor on Saturday. But he's also been capable of being that all season. It hasn't always come to fruition.
Usually the winner of this game is fighting for an ACC regular season title, a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament, something a little more prestigious. Instead, both these teams are kind of fighting to try to get themselves into March Madness. How do you think, how much different will it be in the Smith Center intensity-wise in this game, if any? Or, do you think there could even be more intensity for this game?
Yeah, I think that this is going to be a very intense game, and I think it's going to be a very intense atmosphere. I mean, just from having been in the Smith Center for the Florida State game, the first game that fans were allowed back in basically a year, that element of things really took the game to another notch. And, I think Roy Williams has said a number of times in his career, he said it again after that game, never lost a game because of a crowd, but I've certainly been pushed to a couple of wins because of one. And I think that that's going to contribute. I really do. And, Duke is desperate right now. Duke needs this win to have a chance of an at-large bid still. North Carolina, again, I think this is probably more of a must-win for Duke than it is for UNC, but, North Carolina can't go giving these games away. And if you are coming up on a losing skid to end the season, that's the opposite of the kind of momentum you want. So, no, I think the circumstances are obviously different, but I would expect no drop in intensity, and the fans are only going to create an even better atmosphere for that sort of game.
You mentioned this game means more on the table for Duke than it does for Carolina. And Duke isn't the same team that this Tar Heels saw a few weeks ago, mainly with the departure of Jaren Johnson. What did you make of his decision to walk away from the team and prepare for the NBA?
Yeah, there's a lot of meat on that bone. There's been so much said in the weeks since Jaren Johnson left Duke about, his quote-unquote camp, is he a quitter, all that sort of talk. And, I don't really want to get into all that because I don't know the kid. All I know is the facts of what I know. And that is that at some point back in December, in some way, shape, or form, Jaren Johnson injured his foot. What that injury was, we don't know. How severe it was, we don't know. But he did miss games and had a walking boot, and Duke ended up where they were able to win a couple of games without him. But still, this is a guy who we're talking about. He's a 5-star prospect, and you want to try and make that work as best you can. So for him to leave and say that he wants to rehab his foot and get healthy, how true is that? I don't know. Again, we still don't really have a lot of information about the foot. The thing that I can't blame the guy for is wanting to salvage as much of his NBA draft stock as possible. There are going to be teams that think he's a quitter. There are going to be teams who criticize his decision, and he is going to have to answer for it in NBA pre-draft talk.